Over the last couple of years, I've experimented with various body mounting methods for action and 360 cameras, focusing on options that are lower profile and more comfortable than simply strapping a camera to your head. And on paper, backpack mounts should be perfect for that. But after trying a bunch of off-the-shelf options, I just never really ended up using them. They were uncomfortable, the framing was often bad, and they were annoying to keep on my bag when I wasn't filming. Recently though, I finally landed on a backpack mounting setup for my action camera that I actually enjoy using, and more importantly, one I'm happy to leave on my backpack full time. The footage looks good and it gives me a really useful supplementary angle to pair with my handheld and neck mounted shots. And what's interesting is that I didn't get there by buying yet another purpose-built backpack mount. Instead, it came from adapting something that was working surprisingly well for my 360 cameras, a standard backpack clip. But before I show you the setup, let me quickly break down the three main problems that most backpack mounts suffer from, using these two mounts as examples so you can understand what I was trying to fix. The first problem is poor comfort and excessive bulk. Both of these mounts made my backpack noticeably less comfortable to wear. Wrap-style mounts like this Ulanzi one create a thick pressure point on the shoulder strap and they're prone to sliding around, especially on thinner backpack straps where they often can't grip at all. On the other hand, this Teleson clamp-style mount just felt needlessly bulky. You're constantly reminded it's there whenever it's clamped to your bag, and the clamp teeth bite down so hard that it feels like they're slowly eating into the strap. In both cases, the camera also juts out quite a bit, which not only looks bad, but makes the strap feel heavier and awkward to walk around with. The end result is that you're always aware the mount is there, and that's the exact opposite of what you want from a backpack mounted setup. The second problem is framing, or more specifically, how these mounts let you aim the camera. With the Ulanzi mount, the camera can only pivot around a single axis. If you set it up for landscape video, it naturally ends up pointing outwards instead of forward, which makes it pretty useless for first-person footage. This Teleson mount solves this by adding a ball joint so you can aim the camera in any direction, but in doing that, it introduces a new problem. The plastic ball joint feels cheap and isn't confidence-inspiring. It also adds even more bulk, which is already one of my main criticisms of this Teleson mount to begin with. I've seen other backpack mounts like this with slightly better looking ball joints, but in my experience, any of these plastic ball joints have a bit of give and are prone to slipping or failing over time. The third problem is how these mounts behave when you're not filming, and why they don't work well as permanent fixtures. For me, a backpack mount only makes sense if it's something I'm happy to leave on my bag full time, even when there's no camera attached. Clamp-style mounts like the Teleson aren't designed for that at all. They're meant to be taken out, clamped on, and removed every single time you want to film, which adds a lot of friction to the experience. Wrap-style mounts like the Ulanzi are slightly better, but they still add enough bulk and discomfort that I don't really want them permanently attached to my everyday backpack. And because of those three issues, I never really ended up using either of those backpack mounts long term. But with my 360 cameras, I have been happily using a Peak Design capture clip for backpack mounting. Since 360 cameras use a standard 1/4 inch thread, the setup is incredibly straightforward. You just screw the camera onto the quick release plate, snap it into the clip and hit record. And because the clip itself is compact and secure, the comfort and permanence problems basically disappear. Framing also isn't an issue with the 360 camera, since it captures everything around it, orientation doesn't matter. You just reframe the shot you want later in post. So I decided to adapt this exact setup and see if it could finally make backpack mounting usable for action cameras too. My first attempt was simple. I just added a 1/4 inch tripod thread to action camera mount adapter onto the base plate. With this mount, I had immediately solved the comfort and permanence issues, but there was still one problem left: framing. In this first version, I mounted the Osmo Action 6 vertically, and that let me angle it inward and reliably point it straight ahead instead of having the camera jut out to the side. This all works specifically with the Action 6 because of its square sensor, which allows you to record landscape video even when the camera is mounted vertically. And for straight ahead footage, this actually works very well. But the limitation is that you can't tilt the camera up or down, which turned out to be more restrictive than I expected. For example, when I wanted to capture a lower angle, or when cycling where I wanted less ground in the shot and more of what was ahead of me. And to fix that, I added a 90-degree vertical bracket. This gives me a second pivot axis, which finally lets me tilt the camera up or down. This is the final form of the backpack mount, and the version I've been using the most. I later discovered Peak Design basically already offer this with their POV kit, but you know what, I quite like this thing I've cobbled together. So how good is it in practice? For me, it's definitely a big step up from the other backpack mounts I tried, and it's something I see myself using from time to time going forward alongside my neck mount, which is still my most used accessory for POV footage. That said, it's worth comparing this setup to using the backpack clip with a 360 camera. It's just not quite as seamless. With an action camera, you have to physically re-aim the camera if you want to change your POV angle, and you don't have that reframing ability that lets you create more dynamic sequences. That said, in some situations, I do actually prefer this setup. The footage quality is higher, you're usually working with less extreme fields of view, so you don't get your head creeping into the frame as much, and you front load the framing to when you film instead of having to reframe everything later in post like you do with 360 footage. Overall, if you already have a backpack clip lying around, spending $10 or so to adapt it for backpack footage is absolutely worth considering. As for buying the capture clip solely for this use case, that's a much tougher sell. It works well, but whether it's worth it really comes down to how often you actually see yourself using this type of shot.